Hey there guys and gals, it's Restocker. I hope you have all been having a wonderful day. In this video, I'll be covering some of the awarding essentials for patch 7.07. These are some of the most important awards in the game. Now you'll be placing these observer awards maybe 80-90% of your games. I'm talking about things like putting rune spot wards, things like laning wards, typically stuff of that nature. So before we get right into the video, I'd like to talk a little bit about how you guys can try this out for yourself and just go buck wild with the observer word placements. Start off by typing -WTF, get an observer word for yourself, and you are at liberty to place any observer word that you'd like, and then you can type the -kill wards command and it'll get rid of the observer word. So this is just so you guys can try it out in your own lobby if you want to try to find out cool words for yourself. Now, to get back to the video, there are offensive and defensive words. That's kind of the first little complex thing that you'll learn about observer words and some of the terminology that you'll be hearing in some of your games. So if you're a newer player, I'd like to cover that very quickly. Defensive words are words that you'll be placing on your side of the map. So since I'm on the Radiant team, a defensive word would be me placing an observer word here or perhaps here. Again, fantastic observer word placements to see the rune, and they're on my side of the map. If I'm on the Dire team, placing these observer words will be a little bit more offensive. Heck, you could probably even place an observer word like right here if you're on the Dire team, and it will spot out the rune just barely, and you get a lot of vision up here. You can see if you're on the Dire team, you get all this vision here, and it just barely spots out the rune. So this is a fantastic placement if you're on the Dire team, whereas if you're on the Radiant team, you want to place these observer words here because they give vision of not only the river area but the staircase here, and it's very good to spot rotations. For example, let's say the enemy Dire offlaner, let's say it's about 4 or 5 minutes into the game, they've gotten a little bit of levels. It's becoming a little bit more difficult to lane against your safe lane. So maybe it's like a clockwork and he's going to start making a very early rotation. And this observer word is going to spot that rotation out from the clockwork, because you can see here, it is going to spot out all this area here. And as they walk by, the ward's going to spot them. So the rune just despawned. Let's put a sentry ward here, just pretend that is where the rune spawns. Now, if you're on the Dire team, more defensive wards would be placement right here, or you can place a observer word right here. And both of these are, again, fantastic observer words to spot out the rune. Again, if you're on the Radiant team, these are a little bit more offensive in nature, because imagine you're on the Radiant team, you place this observer word, and you can see Ancients being stacked. You can see the offlaner if they make any early rotations again. Perhaps there's a support hero that just TPs to a tier 2 or a tier 1 here, and they're just kind of finagling around. You can spot out those kinds of movements. So again, these words are multi-purpose. That's what you really have to kind of learn from this wording thing, is that words, you should try to make it so that they're able to garner a lot of information and serve more than one purpose, or focus on more than just one area of the map. So these observer words act as both words that spot out the rune as well as potential rotations from heroes. So again, these are fantastic words. Again, the issue with these words is that they're very commonly placed words, so it's very easy to deward them. So if you can see here that I have 2 observer words here, and if I want to deward it, all I have to do is place 1 sentry word right in the middle here, and it's going to spot out both of these observer words. So it's going to take away 2 observer word placements with 1 sentry, and likewise you can place a sentry word right here. And again, you can see the radius of this sentry ward, the smaller green circle, it encompasses both of these observer words as well. So these are good sentry ward spots to spot out these observer words. And that's essentially the basics for covering out this rune spot area down here. So if you want to, so that's where the trade-off comes in, where you kind of have to have these little mind games. If you notice that these observer words are being constantly taken out, perhaps you throw it down a observer word over here. And you can see here that if you place an observer word over here, you still have vision of this rune area. You give up a little bit of information on the far right side, but you have pretty decent information still about these rotations. And once again, it's further away from the sentry ward, so it's not going to get caught out by this vision radius. So again, just play around with this. You guys will figure out some cool spots. And again, if your opponents aren't dewarding you, go ahead and throw these up. But if you notice that they're constantly dewarding you, feel free to place your observer words, somewhere in the vicinity. Again, if you're on the Dire team, you can place an observer word right here. You can see that it spots out the vision, the rune, and it's out of this vision range of this sentry here. So these are some of the things that you want to consider. And these words are ones that you typically want to stop placing maybe after the I'd say 10-15 minute mark, they become less useful because there aren't as many rotations happening around this side of the map. A lot of people start coming in through here into the enemy jungle, so placing these observer wards aren't as good. If you want to be defensive, start placing them over here or perhaps over here. Again, that's in a later video that you guys can check out. So that's it for the bottom rune spot, and I'll be moving on over to the top rune spot area. Thank you everyone for joining me on the top side. And before I get to the actual ward placements, I want to talk about why the top rune spot is so important. A lot of it has to do with its close proximity to the mid lane here. And earlier I said observer wards essentially serve one purpose, and that's true. The purpose is to give vision, but what you're able to do with that vision can be multifaceted. For example, you can spot out Roshan with an observer ward placed right here. You can see supports rotating around. You have vision of anyone potentially later on in the game going off over here into your jungle and playing aggressively if they're on the dire team. So wards themselves, they serve multiple. The goal is to give vision, but with that vision, you can kind of derive a lot of information. You can do a lot with the information that you have from the vision. So it's multifaceted in that sense, which makes them really cool items. So that's essentially what I want to talk about. And I'll get to the mid observer ward placements a little bit more because they're really cool. I want to get the simple ones out of the way first. So here you want to place the observer ward for the Radiant team. Here you can see that's a very simple observer ward. For the Dire team, it's a little bit less efficient. It's not as great. Whoops, kill wards. It's not as efficient, but it's going to see the rune spot. In fact, this observer ward placement is actually a little bit awkward. You want to make sure that you don't place it too close to the tree here because you're going to miss the rune spot completely. You want to put it off a little bit more to the side here, and you can see now I have vision of the rune. This observer ward is actually a little bit better for the Radiant team as an offensive observer ward because it spots out anyone doing Ancient later on in the game, as well as giving you important vision of the rune as well. So it's actually better for the Radiant team than the Dire team. But if you want, if you're kind of desperate and you know that the opposing team has like a gem or something, or if they're sentry warding this area very early on, which is extremely common, you can opt to put it up here. So for the observer ward placements, other options are to put observer wards right here or right here for both teams. Again, offensive, defensive, depending on which side of the map you are. They give fantastic vision of this river area and of course spot out the rune as well. Again, the issue is that they're very easily dewarded with one sentry ward. So if you want to put a high ground observer ward for your mid laner, again, high ground wards are fantastic. It lets your mid laner trade uphill, lets them land skill shots like Lina's, Dragon Slave, or Shadow Fiend's raises. It's very easy for them to land those abilities. The issue is if your mid laners hitting the opponent on the high ground, if they just have amazing accuracy with their skill shots, it's going to tip off the opposing team that there's a observer ward somewhere in the vicinity, and they're going to call the opposing team's going to call over their support, and they're going to deward it relatively easily. So what you have to do is make sure that you put your observer ward in a relatively sneaky spot. So these are very common sentry ward placements. Putting a sentry ward right here to deward that, and just putting a sentry ward right in the middle to deward everything. What I like to do is place an observer ward that is just slightly behind this little plant here, and you can see that when you place it slightly behind it, it's going to bypass the sentry ward placements, at least the common ones. It's going to get dewarded every now and then, but it's going to bypass it. And again, for this side, you can place it just about right here, and it's going to bypass the sentry ward placement here, and it's just going to give you barely give you vision. You can see that the vision been given by this rune just barely covers it, and this one as well, just barely covering it. And again, they spot fantastic rotations, and you can see just how much vision these wards really give. So let's just kill all the wards again, and I can talk a little bit more about those wards. So place it right here. You can see that it gives you pretty nice vision if you can get the creep wave somewhere in this vicinity. Typically where the creeps are going to meet somewhere around the middle, you have vision over the opposing team. And again, for the dire team, let's kill the other observer ward. If you place it right about here, you can see that you get pretty nice vision up here as well. So again, these observer wards are very nice. They spot out the rune as well as giving you high ground vision for your team. And I think these are fantastic if you place them aggressively as well. Imagine that you're the Radiant team and you're able to place this observer ward. You have vision of all this area over here on the Dire side. And again, if you're the Dire team and you're able to get the observer ward over here for the Radiant team, not only do you get vision of the rune spot, but you get amazing vision over here. So it's very important that you place these observer wards in a relatively sneaky spot. You know, typically high ground wards, they're placed in very obvious positions, like right here or right here. It's very easy to deward these if you put a sentry ward like right in the middle. Again, these wards are going to get caught every now and then. It's not like they're for certain they're not going to get caught. So maybe put them slightly off to the side depending on the situation. It makes it a lot easier to get these wards down if you smoke beforehand. So use a smoke of deceit, and then very early on in the game place these observer wards. They lose a little bit utility as the game goes on because there's not too much happening around the mid lane. But very early on, right from the onset, before the horn even rings, if you're able to smoke, teleport to these towers or something. Actually, teleports have cooldowns these days, so you gotta run immediately to this spot and place your observer wards. So these are some of the better observer wards for the top rune area, and next I'll be covering the wards for the very early laning stages, and that will be the end of the video. So I'll see you guys there. Now I'll be covering some of the offensive and defensive ward placements for the Radiant safe lane, and then I'll reciprocate that and do it for the Dire side as well. For the Radiant safe lane, when you're placing your observer ward, what you want to do is make sure that you closely follow this tree line here. Make sure that you get right in between these trees and place your observer ward like this. And the reason you want to make sure you place your observer wards in this kind of sneaky way and kind of finesse them in is because you want to make sure that the opposing safe laner doesn't spot you out as you place these observer wards. Otherwise, they're very easy targets for being dewarded. You also want to make sure that you don't walk into the enemy tower's vision range when you put them early on in the game. If you walk up here and place an observer ward, it's very likely that the tower is going to see you, or if the opposing offlaner is just, you know, kind of ball it, you know, immediately they kind of just run down from their spawn, they're going to spot you out. You're going to reach here about the same time. So you want to make sure that you put it in kind of a sneaky way so that they don't get dewarded by very common sentry ward placements such as this. Now these are very defensive wards, whereas if you're on the Dire team and you want to place more offensive wards, what you want to do is place this L-shaped ward, or the reverse L, I like to call it. So you want to line it up in such a way that you're going to get this L shape here. You can place it just about anywhere along this line. It doesn't necessarily have to be the L shape. You can put it like right about here. Typically what you want to see is get vision of this area and vision of this area, which is why I call it the reverse L. This is just kind of an added bonus. It's not as important. But what you really want to do is make sure you get this reverse L shape. And that's because supports tend to hang around this area. So if you're the offlaner and you're doing your, going about your business, you're going to be here, you're going to have vision of the lane. And you want to know what these supports are doing. You don't want to be left in the dark. So if I kill the wards, you're not going to know what's happening over here. You don't know exactly where the supports are. You walk here a little bit, you get tiny vision of this area. You don't know if they're here, here, here. Maybe they're getting ready to smoke up. For example, if you, that's the other thing. Remember, I said a little earlier about is that wards have to serve multiple purposes, or kind of give you information about multiple things. For example, if the supports come over here and let's say it's about 4 or 5 minutes into the game, they're sitting at about level 3, maybe 2.5 or something like that, and they pop a smoke of deceit and start running towards their mid laner, this observer ward can potentially spot that early smoke of deceit usage or something like it may be an early support rotation, something of that nature. So it's very important that you're using observer wards to their maximum efficiency. So that's essentially it for the Radiant safe lane. There are some other cool ones that you can put around the tower, especially around the nighttime when it hits the 4-minute mark. You can put observer wards right in front of the tower here. Whoops, that's a sentry ward. Just observer ward right in front of the tower, or you can put it right behind the tower. And this is very good if you have heroes that are very good at pushing early on. Maybe, well, obviously you can't walk like that, so you put this observer ward like right here. And you want to make sure you're standing behind the tree line. And these observer wards are really great because they spot out the vision of anyone teleporting in. And these are really good for when you're pushing a tier 1 tower. Especially at the nighttime, because you don't have great vision. You're sitting at about 800 vision range at night for most heroes. So these observer wards are really good for pushing the objectives very early on. If your hero's like Pvgna, maybe your Jakiro sitting at like level 5-6 minutes into the game or something like that, and he has 3 points in liquid fire, it's very easy to push towers with these heroes. So making sure that you have these observer ward placements, trying to secure objectives, makes it a little bit easier. So in the next clip, I'll be jumping over to the Dire side, and I will see you guys there. Now for the Dire side, the concepts are very similar to the Radiant side. Again, if you're on the Dire team and you want to ward up the lane, you want to make sure you follow this tree line very closely and simply place an observer ward right here. Again, you're going to be in the tree line, so if you do see an offlaner walking up, all you got to do is follow your tree line back to your tower and make sure the opposing offlaner doesn't spot you out, because you want to make sure that they don't see you placing that observer ward. So this is another really nice one. And much like the Radiant side, if you'd like to kind of finesse your way around here and get one that's a little bit less likely to be dewarded, you can just walk around this tree line here and place an observer ward right here, because very common sentry ward placements are typically somewhere around this jungle area here. Again, it's not like these observer wards are not, this one's not going to get dewarded if they just plop a sentry ward right here. It's just that it gives you a little bit better chance if the opponents don't sentry ward correctly. Maybe they throw a little bit further to the right like this, and this one's going to be a bit more safe. So again, just play around, giving you a little bit more options. Now, if you're on the Radiant team and you're trying to play a little bit more offensively, it's very common practice to place an observer ward right here or right here. Again, placing it just so that you get a little bit more vision is always better. So I like placing an observer ward like right here. It shows you great vision of supports, again, in this kind of a weird L shape that you want to make sure you have vision of. It shows you any support shenanigans if they're trying to pull this camp into, maybe they're pulling the small camp and then they're going to pull through into the big camp. It lets you spot that out, and again, just a little bit extra vision into the lane, which never hurts. So it's those kinds of things that you want to take into consideration. Again, the goal of this video as a whole, starting right from the get-go, was to talk about the rune spots, as well as talking a little bit about the laning situation. And these are some of the earlier wards. You're going to be placing these in a vast majority of your games. If you're a support hero, you should be focusing on getting these wards down for your team and garnering that early advantage, because Dota is a game about getting those incremental advantage. And again, think about Dota in the way that I was explaining these observer wards to you guys. There's like one objective with the observer wards, and that's to get vision. And what you do with the vision you have, and the way that you're able to kind of shape the ideas and utilize to derive information from what your enemy team is doing. For example, if you don't see your enemies crossing your observer wards, you can kind of get an idea as to where they are. And again, these are the basic ones, the ones that you're going to be throwing a lot. Again, don't think the word basic means these aren't important. These words are extremely important. They might actually end up winning you the game, and oftentimes it can help you get that very early advantage, such as this ward blocking these camps here. And you want to be utilizing these wards to get that early advantage and push your success right from the get-go. So that's it for this video, guys. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, make sure you leave them in the comments below, and I will get to those as soon as possible. And make sure you check out the videos that'll be coming out very soon regarding how to ward for things like tower pushes. I'll be covering one for tower pushes and a very extensive guide on warding and blocking camps. Yep, thank you so again for watching, and until next time, see you guys.